since 1966.
This is NBC4's News Conference with Conan Nolan, Southern California's longest-running public affairs program.
On this edition of News Conference, the Biden White House doesn't use the word crisis, but that's as good a word as any to describe what's happening at the U.S.-Mexican border. Democrats still blame the previous administration for the surge in undocumented children at the border, but former Trump officials say they had warned about this but were ignored. We talk with California's new U.S. Senator Alex Padilla on what he thinks should happen next. Governor Gavin Newsom is fighting for his job after petitions with more than 2 million signatures have been submitted, well over the number needed for a recall election. We talk with California Assembly Speaker Anthony Rendon about that. Did the legislature hand over too much authority to the governor on the COVID response? And is anybody concerned in Sacramento about the surge of businesses leaving the state? And California Republican Party Chairwoman Jessica Milan Patterson gives us her take on the recall. She says the governor has himself to blame for what she believes was the incompetent handling of the pandemic response. Greetings and welcome to the Tom Brokaw News Center here at Universal City. I'm Conan Nolan. First up, the Honorable Alex Padilla, member of the United States Senate, Democrat from California. He joins us from Washington, D.C. So, Senator, thank you for taking the time. First, I have to ask about the border crisis that we're going through right now. 500 children a day. We understand the Rio Grande Valley border facilities are at 360% capacity. What do you believe should be done there?
Sadly, Conan, yet another example of the mess that the Trump administration has left behind. So, I'll get to the short-term actions in a second, but want to take the opportunity to say, yet it's another reason why we need to move along immigration reform that is long overdue, so that we don't have crises like these coming at us every few years. Look, I think the Biden administration is moving pretty quickly to not just respond, but do things differently than we've seen over the last 4 years. It's, as Secretary Mayorkas has mentioned, it's an all-hands-on-deck moment. It's not just an issue for Homeland Security and the Border Patrol. It's an issue for Health and Human Services and others to properly and humanely process these children that are coming to the border, the vast majority of them refugees seeking asylum. So there is a due process that's in place that needs to be respected, but they're doing it as quickly as they can given the limitations of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We should point out that Republicans say just the opposite, that it was the Biden administration's haste at overturning all of the Trump immigration policies that sent out a message to Central America, send your kids. I should point, I know you don't buy into that narrative, but on the left of your party, progressives have say that the Biden administration was unprepared for this, that you have children in overcramped conditions, reports they're not being allowed to shower. Do you share those concerns that the Biden administration was caught flat-footed on this?
I disagree that they were caught flat-footed. I think, again, we started with the constraints of the mess left behind by the Trump administration. They're trying to do their best to catch up. So, yes, our role in Congress is to keep the pressure on the administration and the agencies to get it together sooner rather than later. But I have big differences with my Republican colleagues. You can't just go down the border and use the situation as a prop and then show up in Washington and offer no solutions. I agree on this. Just undoing the executive orders signed by Donald Trump is a start, but it is not a solution. When I say immigration reform is long overdue, it's been decades since we've modernized our immigration policies and infrastructure. So it's a lot more to it than just responding to the refugees at the border. We're talking, how do we protect dreamers? How do we protect not just farm workers, but all essential workers? How do we respect TPS holders? And shorten the time frame for those eligible to go through the naturalization process. There's a lot of pieces to this, Conan, and I'm eager to get to that policy work as the new chair of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration.
Right. So there's a long-term question and policy debate. But on the short term, isn't it also a good idea for the administration, the president's done this a little bit, to tell the people of Central and South America, do not send your children up here? Remember, they go through cartel territory. Amnesty International said the border between Mexico and Guatemala was a human rights crisis. Isn't that part of the agenda here, to try to get these children from being sent up this way in the first place?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And the president has done that. I have done that in a number of interviews with networks that go into Latin America. All leaders, elected and otherwise, should be sending that message. And it's not just a soundbite. If you look at the language of some of the immigration reform bills that have already been introduced, they are all clear when it comes to a pathway to citizenship for immigrants, documented, undocumented. It's for people who have been here, not for people who might arrive since the introduction of those bills. So we need to be clear in that message.
I want to move on to another issue in a moment, but with regard to what's happening at the border, do you believe that how this is handled will determine whether or not you get long-term immigration reform out of Congress?
Look, I think the crisis as we've seen it is only adding to the importance and the urgency with which we need to act. So I'm going to take the view that it's going to help as we're negotiating the specific elements of a big package, along with individual pieces that are moving simultaneously.
Should we get rid of the filibuster as a means to have the Democratic majority get their agenda through Congress?
Absolutely. I'm convinced more now than ever that the filibuster needs to go. We've seen it throughout the course of our history. We've seen it in the last decade. The filibuster has been used and abused to obstruct progress. That's why we haven't seen the immigration reform that we so desperately need get through the United States Senate. That's why we haven't seen more aggressive action on climate change and expanding access to quality and affordable health care and so much more. So if we need to say goodbye to the old traditions of the Senate to get things done for families across California, across the country, then let's do it sooner rather than later.
And finally, your first speech on the floor of the Senate, there was an emotional moment.
My name is Alex Padilla, y soy el hijo de Santos y Lupe Padilla. I am the son of Santos and Lupe Padilla.
You're standing in the same chamber that John C. Fremont and Leland Stanford and Hiram Johnson, Richard Nixon, Kamala Harris. What was that like?
Yeah, well, I guess I might be starting to develop a little bit of a reputation of letting my emotions show a little bit, especially as I reflect on the journey of my parents and our family. Right, to think of, you laid out the history of people who have represented California over the course of our state's history in the United States Senate, to be the first Latino proud son of immigrants. It fills me with emotion, reflecting not just on my family's experience, but knowing that it's so representative of so many other families and their journeys that have contributed to the state of California, made it better, and finally have their stories heard and considered so much more in the deliberations of the United States Senate.
The Honorable Alex Padilla, member of the United States Senate, Democrat from California. Senator, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Conan. Take care.